Hi, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Glad on this episode, delighted to be talking with comics creator Niall Orourke. Niall, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
My pleasure, absolutely my pleasure. And I will mention two titles of yours that I'm familiar with, which are very different titles. I'll say that. One of those being Squish and Squash, and the other one being there it is. Yep,
Yes,
absolutely.
you see it.
Nice family-friendly fare. Yes. Enjoyment for all the ages, illustrated by Mike Cardigan. And then the other slightly different take is yeah, the crying boy. Yeah, I love the range.
Yeah. Oh, you can see it. I don't know what's blurred. Anyway, maybe you can add graphics later on when you edit this video.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. I'll drop the images in, and
That was,
that's
that
Rob
was
Moran on the
Bob
visuals.
Moran. Yeah, he was
Mhm.
Scotland based. Mike Hartigan was Squish and Squash. He's the co-creator. He's based in New Zealand, and the Crying Boy, Rob Moran, is co-creator. He's based in, I guess, the Orkney Islands in Scotland. Yeah.
Love it, love it. Well, generally, I start out with sort of a background origins question. So I'm curious about how you decided comics were the space that you wanted to create in and share stories in.
Ever since I was a kid, reading comic books, getting lost in that world and escape from reality. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from, I guess, or whatever background you have. Well, you always wanted to escape from, as a kid, wanted to escape from reality that you're in, and then live in different fantasy worlds. Comics gave you that ability to do that. You can go outer space,
Mm-hmm.
or World War II, because Warlord was a popular comic growing up in Ireland. That was a British comic about World War II and stuff like that. So that was popular amongst boys, of a certain age growing up, and that led to other books too. And for those who stuck with comics, the progression was you had Warlord, you had Battle, you had all the different British war comics
Mm-hmm.
that
Hmm.
led into, like, a lot of these artists and writers would have progressed later on into the science fiction, into the more like uh, uh, American inspired comics, I guess you could say. You had like writers like you'd see writers like Alan Grant. You had
Hmm.
yeah, you could even say you had your Alan Moores. They came from that background in British comics, from that age, from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
Once they crossed the pond, they became a lot, you know, bigger. The giants of the industry, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, growing up reading that was the first, exposure to comics. Would have been a lot of British comics like Warlord, the Beano, like the fun stuff about, um, the dandy, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm dating myself by saying that, but that's and even then, and even back then, those comics are really old. Like my parents grew up reading them, Dan Dare, the Eagle, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. But they were still around, they were probably in their last throes, but they were still around, and that led to other stuff. So
Yeah.
that's from being a kid in school reading comics. Oh, and they're all black and white as well.
Hmm.
And that led to British Marvel, and British Marvel established itself in the I guess it would have been the very early 70s, and they probably would have lasted until the early to mid 80s. That died out because they were all they were all reprints of US books, but they were oversized.
Hmm.
And the beautiful thing about the British Marvel books, I thought, because they were all in black and white, they were all oversized. It gave you like a better look of the artwork, as no offense to any colorists out there, but like you got to see all the details and stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that was another uh, uh, beginning of my interest in comics, was when picking up all the British Marvel titles, like then they had Captain Britain. They had other
Hmm.
magazines that led on to 2000 AD, into my teenage years, and so forth. And that's when I got interested in, like, the real American comics, like the ones we know now, the format. Back
Yeah.
then in Ireland, they didn't really have there wasn't that many specialist shops until like till the mid to late 80s. you had like Forbidden Planet, places like that open up, and then you had the whole access to pretty much everything. Before
Hmm.
that, you had the old newsstands, which limited you to like whatever the guy had, and you'd go back into the city with my dad, and he'd be like, "He has the same comics as last year." When's this guy gonna get new stuff in? It just didn't exist. There's no distribution back then, I guess, especially like in a country like Ireland. But going into the mid '80s when things started to change, and you know that country became a lot more cosmopolitan, a lot more advanced than what
Hmm.
it was, and that plays into that. But we're going off script here.
No,
But
no,
yeah,
that's great. That's great.
um, that's yeah, that would have been my beginning of my interest in comic books. Would have all thanks to British comics, which is living in Ireland. It's like, hey, we wouldn't like to say that too loud.
Right, right. But
That's the
it
reality.
sounds
That's the reality. That's thankfully that I did, because a lot of my friends would have been more into sports and stuff. I would have been more into comics and that kind of thing. So,
mm,
you know, and of course, when Star Wars came along, it was like, you know, forget about it.
yeah, yeah. But it sounds like comics were part of your sort of your family process too, sort of passed down. You said your parents read comics as well.
Well, also I had like there would have been I think it was one shout out to William McDermott. He was listening to this. He was the guy. His dad, I guess, was worked in the ferries, and he always brought back American comics from England. So it was always like, "Hey, Will, can I borrow the comics?" And I don't ever think I gave them back to him. I think I just kept borrowing them off until he had none left. So I had his comic book collection. But yeah, that was it. I don't know. I just stuck with it my whole life. It was just one of those things. People who outgrew it, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so curious then as you entered comics, because as I mentioned, you have a nice range of work. What kinds of stories draw you in? What are the parts of stories that really appeal to you?
It's just so funny because 2019 versus me 2019 versus me 2021 is like 20-year leap.
Uh-huh.
I went to Comic Con in 2019 as I did every other year since I don't know, maybe 2011 when New York Comic Con was a big thing, I guess. Maybe before that. Whenever year New York Comic Con really took off in the Java Center, it was when I started going really serious, like with portfolios and stuff, and getting rejected and everything else, and getting critiqued, and getting people like especially a lot of the Irish guys who are working for Marvel and DC. I'd meet them and they tell me what I'm doing wrong or what I need to improve on. So every year I'd learn more and more and more. And then one year, so it was 2019, I went with this submission and I thought, this is the one, that was absolute garbage. It was laughed out at. 2019, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? How do I figure this out? I met somebody and he said that uh, actually the guy's name is Len O'Grady. He's a great colorist.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Thanks, Len. He gave me some great advice. He told me, you don't need necessarily to go to the traditional route of going to a publisher. You have Kickstarter, you have all these other different, crowdfunding um, platforms at your fingertips. You can actually go out there, write a comic book, find an artist that suits you, the style, or do it yourself, and then raise the money and print the comic book, and you've done it. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to have Marvel or DC or anybody else on the cover to say you've done it. It's a comic book. So that got me thinking, and then we all know what happened to the world after that. It was COVID, and
Right, right.
gave me all the time in the world to go, okay, how do I figure this out and how do I get this going? So I reached out to Rob Moran because I loved this. I'd seen his style and I got, this is the style I wanted. I had this horror comic book idea in my head for a long time. It took me a while to figure it out, the nuts and bolts of it, and it all came together when I realized I should set it in my own neighborhood. I should just use what I know.
Hmm.
So Queens, New York. So I wanted to do a black and white book. I guess that's why I said at the beginning I was first exposed to black and white comics growing up, and I always loved the look of a black and white. Like if you look at like the early, maybe I'm wrong. I have this in my mind that the early Hellblazers, John Constantine, they were in
Hmm.
black and white. The Vertigo books,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
I love that whole like it looks really like gloomy, depressing kind of. You can really get into it, like into the environment of what they were going for there. And I wanted to do that with this. I'm like, So I saw his style and it was really good, really impressed with his art, you know. So I reached out to him. Um, whatever, didn't work out at the time, and then when COVID hit, it was like, yeah, we had the time to do it, so we launched a very successful Kickstarter, and we were off and running. We were trying to pitch it around to different publishers and stuff, you know. And there was a
Yeah.
couple of ups, you know, a couple of ups and downs, rocky road. Won't get in necessarily into what went wrong with that, but at the end of the day, Keenspot were great. They took us on,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
we have the first book coming out in February, and they've been great, you know. And then that's
Yeah.
also with Squish and Squash. When it's so funny because the Crime Boy was a 2 year project,
Mm.
and I needed something different. I want, you know, it's always something like I'm working on two other things in my head right now that I've already started doing, but it's like
Uh-huh.
you're always chasing the next project because I guess you know you want to have something lined up ready to go. When something is run its course, you know, I mean, obviously that's how I guess everything works with films and books and everything else. Um, it's just a creative process. It's just like you know, I'm hungry, you know. I want to
Hmm.
get, I want to create more, you know. But the Squish and Squash came out from the Crime Boy. If it wasn't for the Crime Boy, that wouldn't be Squish and Squash because I needed something light. I wanted something that was, you know, uh, something not too heavy and all ages kind of appealed to me in that sense, you know. Um, I was at Baltimore Comic Con in 2022, and I approached Mad Cave. I think they just bought Maverick, and they had paper cuts, and that gave me the idea. Like, oh yeah, you got all ages. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
They went into it, so um, I pitched it around and came spot. Boom! I found one of the comics in a comic book store, and I'd never heard of them before, and I was looking around for a publisher that does all ages stuff. You know,
Hmm.
that wasn't like one of the top five publishers because you know yourself how hard it is to get in with one of these people. You know, so I was like, you know what, they're an independent company. They seem to have a lot of a really eclectic mix of books, and I like what I saw. You know, so I pitched it to them, and within a week we signed a contract, myself and Mike Hardigan, and Squish and Squash came out at the end of November. Yeah, the end of
Hmm.
November. So that was a lightning fast process. You know, we signed with them in April, I think, at the end of April this year, and then the first book is out already. You know, it's
Yeah.
pretty,
Yeah.
pretty fast. You know, I don't know if that's how it usually goes. You know, but I was impressed. Well, Mike's he's a really good he's really good artist, and he's making moves. He's got some other books coming out, and he's gonna. I always tell him, but he's laughing. I'm like, I think he's gonna be a big name. You know, he's a
Yeah.
really good
Yeah.
artist.
Very
And
cool.
then, of course, now I have the Crime Boy and Rob Moran, and you know, I'm happy I'm so happy for him because he gets to have a book on the shelf in America. You know, and I
Hmm.
said, you
Hmm.
know, because I don't think he's done an American comic since the last Image book that he had. So you know, but it's great. You know, and we just got the spotlight in previews, so that should help. I hope. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
in itself, it's a great achievement. So you know, thanks Keenspot, thanks previews. You know,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned you have a couple of projects that you're thinking about and beginning to explore. So, without giving too much away, anything that you'd like to say about those?
they're still early. I mean, I've started writing the first one. It's called Omni Must Be Destroyed, and it's a science fiction adventure story. And basically, it's how could I describe it? It would be like Micronauts meets Transformers, I guess. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
with a like a Battlestar Galactica type story thrown in. You know, uh, that's where I'm. You know, that's we did a cover and I did a little synopsis, but I mean, it's not. We're not. I mean, maybe February or March, I'll get really deep into it. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
at the moment, I'm focusing on just finishing up Squish and Squash, and the Crime Boy is wrapped. That's done. Four books
Mm.
done. So um, that will get us to, I guess, August, because they're bi-monthly books. So I will have a book on the shelf until August, and then I gotta have something else ready. You know.
That's right. That's right. Any particular collaborations that you'd like to engage in? Any dream collaborators out there?
I'm actually thinking about doing the next one by myself if I
Oh,
have to do
nice.
it. So, because I am actually an illustrator myself. I mean, I'm
Hmm.
it's a big challenge for me to do that, but
You've
I
done Roach Mill, right? A cover for them.
I caught for Roach Mill, yeah, and
Hmm. Hmm.
I kind of have to challenge myself, maybe to do this,
Yeah.
even if I just did one issue just to see, just to get my stuff out there, we shall see. I mean, I have, I have one collaborator that I'd already approached about doing the book with, and that's Hernan Gonzalez. He's a really good artist. I have a couple of other people who have approached me, which is great, who wanted to work with me. But I like it, really like his art. He has a cover for the Crime Boy book 3, the main cover, and he's really good. Um, so as I said, like I haven't decided yet. It's still early days. It's like February or March. I'm gonna really dive into it. Have
Hmm.
book 1 ready to go. Um, right now, it's as I said, I'm concentrating on Squish and Squash and the Crime Boy. I don't want to get too ahead of myself with everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's,
Absolutely.
when the new year hits, that's when it's time to um, get all my ducks in a row for whatever projects I have. I have two in mind. The other one is a mid grade book, and that's we'll see how that goes. At the moment, it's another cover with a synopsis. I haven't really fleshed out the whole world for that yet, but I mean, it's yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. And I
I,
love
I,
the continued range.
I'm saying that now. I know for a fact I have two other ideas I could talk about, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That it sounds like the ideas are there and they keep coming.
the ideas are there, keep coming, but I mean, it's like, do Kickstarter? Do I approach a publisher? It's like
Hmm.
the way we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can folks kind of connect, follow along? Where are the places that are most active for you?
Well, I mean, I'm on Facebook and I'm on Instagram.
Hmm.
NYC Dub is my page. Also, Keenspot is the publisher for both my books. So if you go on keenspotshop.com, you'll find you'll find Squish and Squash is there already. Book 2 is out in January, and The Crime Boy is ready to go in February. So that won't be listed yet. I don't think. Maybe it will. I'm not sure. I have to double check that. But that's the publisher, and yeah, it's been great so far.
Hmm. Hmm.
They they they've been very very. The communication's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
From day one. Like the first week, I got a schedule, full previews release schedule. We're in the second or third email from them. It's great.
Awesome.
I knew we were onto a good thing. So
Yeah.
cheers,
Yeah.
Keen Spot.
That's right. That's right. Well, anything that we've missed that you want to make sure to share before we
Um,
close?
the Crime Boy oh yeah, we sent book 2 to previews today. That should be in February's previews. But yeah, if you have December's previews, you'll see that the Crime Boy has a spotlight. Which is great. We've got a
Hmm.
spotlight for the first book, and all the covers are listed there. Um, Squish and Squash book 2 is out next month, and yeah, I mean that's so I have like Squish and Squash should be like January, the Crime Boys, February. So it's kind of like each one bi-monthly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Squish and Squash is actually moving up. I think it's going quarterly after book 2, just to get it done. So we're not racing the whole time because
Hmm.
it's a 4 book series. So we're spacing it out a bit more next year. But we're on book 3 now, so almost finished it. So it's been a fun ride. So see where that goes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful, Niall, and thank you for jumping on. Thank you for talking with me, and may the creating continue. I'm looking forward to seeing the issues to come and the stories that you're currently forming and putting together as well.
Shout out to my co-creators on the Crime Boy, Rob Moran, letterer
Hmm.
Justin Birch, who's actually on both books, and the
Hmm.
Squish and Squash, Mike Hartigan, and again Justin Birch, the letterer. So
Yep. Yeah, love it. Love the
So,
creating community.
yeah, yeah. Big shout out to those guys.